they're coming for the bureaucrats. Hey, I am Chuck the Bureaucrat. Lately, and for entirely predictable reasons, I've been getting a number of comments that can be summarized as, "You better watch out. They're coming for you, bureaucrat." And I get it. Nobody likes bureaucrats, and there's plenty of talk about government spending cuts. But bureaucrats are remarkably resistant to ouster in these situations. And if you don't understand why, you can just end up mud wrestling with a pig. To get started, bureaucracy springs up anywhere that there's some kind of limited resource that people are willing to fight for. For today's discussion, you don't have to go any further than tax dollars to see a good example of this. Second, bureaucrats are in the business of saying no. We primarily function to restrict access to those tax dollars. And all the multiple layers of bureaucracy, well, their main function is to fuss and fight over how those limited dollars should be distributed. And at the same time, bureaucrats always work in tandem with a character I call the big man. The big man is the chief. He's the one who wants to get credit for the generous distribution of all those resources. The big man wants to say, "You get a new car and you get a new car." But when someone comes up to the big man and says, "Well, how come I didn't get a new car?" The big man wants to be able to say, "Ooh, I wanted to give you a new car, but he wouldn't let me." The symbiotic relationship between bureaucrats and big men is ancient. So much so that when the old big man goes away and the new big man shows up, that the seasoned bureaucrats don't even get bothered by all the talk about, "Well, we can't have these bureaucratic processes anymore." Because the bureaucrats know that the process is going to stay. What's really going to change is the priority for distribution. The bureaucrats know that they're still going to be in the business of saying no to somebody on behalf of the big man. And then, and I know that this is going to sound paradoxical, but bureaucrats are remarkably good at cutting government spending, or at least cutting somebody else's government spending. This might surprise you, but the Pentagon does not have a giant bucket of cash just sitting there waiting for someone to come up and ask for some. All the money that the government has is earmarked either for some organization or for some mission. What that means is that anytime somebody wants a little more rice in their rice bowl, they gotta sneak it out of somebody else's rice bowl. My point being that as bureaucrats wrangle over the distribution of resources, they are constantly and explicitly saying, "We should cut money from you so that I can have more." Well, sometimes the big man just decides that he needs $10 million for his super important project, and he turns to his bureaucrats and says, "Go get it, boys." And the bureaucrats go, "Well, is there any particular program you want us to cut that from?" And the big man goes, "Whatever's easiest." And so the bureaucrats walk into the back room, fire up their chainsaw, and hack $10 million off of somebody. My point being that no matter how loud the screaming gets, the bureaucrats always have a plan for where they're going to cut next. And to wrap up, I'm going to share with you something super secret about these government efficiency projects, because they crop up just about every 2 years. There is a special warrior class of bureaucrat who is trained and cultivated specifically for these types of situations. You get some congressional legislation or executive order that directs a review of something, and guess who gets assigned to work that project? Every organization sends a few of their hand-picked bureaucrats to help out. And then guess what happens? The Air Force rep starts making recommendations about how we can cut the Navy. The Indo-PACOM rep starts making recommendations about how we can cut NORTHCOM, and then everybody switches into defensive mode. And just to save somebody the effort of commenting that bureaucrats are like cockroaches, let me give you this even more depressing assessment. I mean, at the end of the day, all that will be left are the bureaucrats. And not because the bureaucrats are living off of the remains, but because the bureaucrats will have built what remains. Now, I'm not saying that things won't change. In fact, I'm kind of suspicious that things should change. But all that can really change is the volume of resources consumed and the priority for the distribution of those resources. Other than that, not much is going to change. In fact, one thing that is never going to change is that they are always going to be coming for the bureaucrats, and the bureaucrats are always going to be ready. And now, if you want to see a slightly more amusing take on bureaucrats, watch one of these videos.